I don't know, but I could play the role of an atheist. Hey guys, Wayne Fillmore here, and we are starting live. We're going to be talking about creation models at a glance, and we're going to be talking about different creation models. Of course, it's kind of redundant for me saying that. But we're going to be talking about different creation models, different creation philosophies, ideologies, theologies, stuff like that. Starting from young Earth creationists all the way up to I mean, aren't there even different views besides theistic evolution? Well, we'll get into that. But you guys talk amongst yourself. I'm about to get my clothes at the dryer.
All right, cool. Um,
Okay, so why uh, are you 100% convinced that you're like, are you a young Earth creationist, and
well,
compared compared to what you were
I'm a
before, how
younger.
convinced are you of your model now? Like, what give me like a gauge of where you are at the moment.
Okay, okay. So I am a young Earth creationist, but I am not a dogmatic young Earth creationist. I'll tell you why I am a young Earth creationist is because I believe the Bible, or I believe the Book of Genesis. The first chapter teaches 6 literal days of creation. That's the way it makes sense. That's kind of the way it makes sense. And then the timelines from Adam to Joseph. If you follow those down, you can only get 6,000 years of human history if you follow the genealogies all the way down to Joseph. And today. So unless you mess with the days, you can't really. I don't see a way you can get around 6,000 years
Well,
in
let
the
me ask you
Bible.
this, Wyatt. Do you know when the church started to accept the 6,000-year-old interpretation?
I think it was around. Oh man, who was that? I it's on the tip of my tongue. I forget.
You mean
Ellen,
Ellen
Ellen
G.
G.
White?
White.
Yeah.
Well, no. It goes back a little bit farther back than that. It comes from a guy's chronological or
Oh,
chronology.
James Usher.
Yeah, Bishop James
Oh
Usher.
yeah, James Usher. Yes.
James Usher did the chronological, but Ellen G. White promoted it.
Right. And so that's where that comes from.
And that's still under the assumption of base 10.
Steve,
I'm gonna go with base 60.
yeah, Steve's been listening to what I've been saying.
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing either way. I'm just saying that one's no more viable than the other. But we don't go by how old something is by chronological account. Anyways, that's just absurd. It's not science. That's just chronology. So, I mean, you can't just say the Earth is 6,000 years old because we have a chronological record. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
So, like Wyatt, the Genesis 5 genealogy is literally, when I say the word literally, I literally mean literally,
No, I'm not.
is literally derived from
Sorry.
the Sumerian king list. And you have in the ones place of each ending year of death. So like Adam lived 930 years, and every ending value, you have a common numeral of 0, 2, and 5. But then you have two other ages given, Methuselah and Enoch, that have unique ages that are also triangular numbers. So these numbers don't designate actual years that they lived. It's more communicating the function of who those people were, and it's kind of like a gammatria. It's the names work out into a certain value. Think the number 666 in Revelation. It's sort of like that, where 666 is literally the value for Baal. in the Old Testament, and yeah.
Well, why? Let me ask you this: are you willing to at least come to a reasonable conclusion with us all, where we can just reason together? Can you accept with us that the 6,000-year-old interpretation is not directly from God, but it is just that, a man's interpretation?
I could accept that, yes.
Okay. So if it's not directly from God, that means that when we test it, and if it isn't true, that doesn't mean that God is wrong. That means that man's interpretation is wrong, right?
Right.
Right. All right. So now we're getting somewhere. So what evidence would be sufficient enough for you to believe that the Earth is not 6,000 years, and not from a scientific perspective? I'm talking about from a theological perspective.
Well, you can't really. I'm not saying that there's a specific evidence. I mean, if there's evidence, I would say with the old Earth view that makes it more consistent with Scripture than the young Earth view, because I'm all about consistency with theological consistency. So that's why I am a young Earth creationist, because I think that's theologically consistent with the Book of Genesis.
Anybody else want to take this? I'm texting.
Well, why? Okay, first of all, there's two stories in Genesis. There's obviously Genesis 1 and 2, where they're completely different as far as time. And I know John Han Solo has explained to you before that the Hebrew text doesn't mention a single day. I mean, the Yom is an indefinite period of time in the Hebrew text, unless somebody stipulates that King James only literals. We have to go by the older text when it comes to that. So I don't think that's really a fair claim to say, well, it matches with Genesis, when Genesis doesn't say anything about 7,000 years in the Hebrew text or the older codexes. So again, I don't know why you're married to this whole 7,000-year model when it can be demonstrated in multiple different ways that a 7,000-year model would just not work. It just isn't tenable.
Right, and it doesn't mean that God is wrong. It just means that guy, James Usher, he wasn't inspired by God, which is fine. The Bible doesn't say the Earth is 6,000 or 10,000 years old, and if you don't believe that, you're not a Christian. Maybe Ken Ham might say that, but the Bible doesn't say that. Moving on, because I don't just want to talk about young Earth creationism. Well, I'll tell you this way. When I was a young Earth creationist, I did believe, like, from a young age, yeah, it was 6 literal 24-hour days. But from a child's perspective, a kid isn't going to go and look at the Hebrew text. A kid isn't going to have the full understanding that a Hebrew scholar or a biblical scholar is going to have. But I didn't start believing in a 6,000, 10,000-year-old Earth. And I can tell exactly when and where I started to believe this. Right in my house, on my couch. I remember it like it was yesterday. We have a finished basement, and we have a TV down here. We have a TV in the front, and we have the computer and everything in the back. And so I was in my basement on my couch watching Answers in Genesis on the NRB network, the National Religious Broadcasting Network. And I used to DVR their stuff every single day, and Ken Ham would be speaking, or one of his speakers from Answers in Genesis would be speaking. And I remember where I actually started. I remember where and when I started to believe this. When Ken Ham, he made it so clear to me that could be the only true interpretation of the Bible, because that's the plain reading of the text. And what I've come to realize, when I stepped away from young Earth creationism, is you have to look at a lot more than just the plain reading of the text. Why? Because the Bible wasn't written in English.
Okay.
And so when you properly exegete it and use proper hermeneutics, when you do hermeneutics, you're supposed to go off of the tradition or the or the
intended,
belief of that. What you say?
yeah, the intended meaning of the text.
Right, and you have to go off of what the people at that time were thinking, and you have to look at it through their tradition and their culture. And from a Jewish culture, um, they truly don't believe it was 6 24-hour days.
Hmm. Right.
So that's actually that's not a new interpretation. The newer interpretation would be the young Earth creation model.
Wow.
So all I'm trying to say is what could lead you to the right interpretation is what I did also was I not only looked at the science and like the theology of it, but I did some church history research, and come to find out, yeah, the Jewish scholars and the original like biblical theologians, they did believe God made the world in 6 days, but it wasn't six 24-hour days. It was 6 long periods of time, and that is the original Hebrew reading of the text.
Yeah,
And
they're more like epics.
right,
They're like they're undistinguishable, indeterminable epochs of time. But you know, the Jewish they have a lot of things that are allegorical. But they never believed that it was 6 literal days, 24-hour period of days.
Yeah.
Or that translated to 1,000 years per day. So that was brought up much later on. I mean, that was like the 17th century.
So Wyatt, what might be? I think the one point that you might be thinking of right now is the phrase evening and morning in Genesis 1 that happens
Right.
throughout the 6 days, and like how do you make sense of that? Now, Steve
Well,
just mentioned the word. Like, are you thinking that? Because I want to.
well, yeah, well, yes. The Bible does define its terms. You gotta remember, the Bible actually does define its terms. Whenever there's a term in the Bible usually defines it. Like the word faith, Hebrews 11:1 defines that. Every time there's a new word in the Bible defines it almost every time. So when it says the word day, Genesis says the evening and morning were the days.
Right. Now, notice what Steve said. He said, and I've told him this. I've told him about the yom word, that it can mean an indefinite amount of time, and then he used the word epoch. Now, the evening and morning, the structure of the text, you have now. If the days were meant to be 24 periods, you would need to have either evening to evening or morning to morning with a definite article before the word yom. But in the Hebrew text, you have evening to morning, and there's no definite article. It just literally says yom echad. It doesn't say ha yom. It just has day 1, day 2, day 3. So now Hebrew is a relatively recent language, and at the time of Moses and basically all the way back to Abraham, they would have been speaking a cuneiform script, sort of like Ugaritic. And now Erev and Boker, Erev is evening, Boker is morning. Those terms in that language literally mean chaos and order. So Genesis 1, you know, as scientists like Steve and myself, we would kind of go, there's really no such thing as epochs in the natural history of this universe. All we've done is we place certain epochs to systematize, you know, the events in Earth's history. So so the question would be, well, why would God require epochs? Like, here's the start of one epoch and here's the end of that epoch. Well, it's sort of the same structuring as the way we structurize everything, where the first day has a certain amount of conditions that God needs to bring about. And guess what? How does he do that? Well, it's first chaotic, and then it's ordered. Hence, the words that we translate into evening and morning. And then day 2, it's initially in a chaotic state, and then it's ordered, and on it goes. And then finally, day 7 doesn't have this phrase evening, morning, because guess what? The last thing to be created is Adam and Eve. So there's no more creating to take place because God is resting. So there's no more from chaos to order. And so that's actually what those terms mean. Just to clarify what Steve was saying with the word epoch. And yeah, maybe you can respond.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a Hebrew or Greek scholar, and I don't know if I need to be to read my Bible, because I believe that if the Bible is actually God's word, then He can write in a way that I can understand, and I do not have to go to the original languages. I'm not saying the original languages aren't useful. I'm saying that I can understand it.
Yeah, but that would also lead to people being confused and misled too. I mean, you got to remember, it's in the King James 1611 Bible, written in English type format. People use that to try to convince people of anything. And when you have young Earth creationism, these people literally are using the literal language of the Bible rather than the allegorical or figurative language, to try to convince people that the Earth is only 6,000 years old. And they do so for monetary reasons. It's as simple as that. It's for monetary gain. It's a business. And so it does help to actually go to the original text and see what actually is being said. For example, if you look at the word kind, the word kind is never mentioned in the Greek Septuagint. It actually, the word is genos. I can't say the Greek word for it.
Yeah, genos, yeah.
Yeah, but it means literally family or descendants, not kind. That was changed later on. But now that it changed to kind, people have this strange argument about kinds now. But it was never in the original Bible, so it shouldn't even be an argument.
It's all to do. I mean, if we were living, say, after Jerome translated the Hebrew and Greek into Latin, and we were using the Vulgate, we would be saying the same thing, because we would be Latin-speaking people going, I only need the Vulgate. I don't need the older scriptures. But here's the. I'll just give you an analogy why. In fact, this is a factual analogy. The story of Abraham coming out of Ur of the Chaldeans. The word Ur, again, is an Ugaritic word, so it's pre-Hebrew, which basically means fortified city. But the same word, in fact, it's spelt the same way in Hebrew, and guess what? It translates to fire. So there was a tradition, post-Christian tradition, that arose when certain Jewish scribes, specifically one who, the Targum Jonathan, the rabbi who wrote the Targum. Basically, a Targum is written in Aramaic, which is a language just after Hebrew. So he looked at Ur, and not knowing about Ugaritic, he mistranslated Ur, which means city, to mean fire. And then a legend came out from that, where they started believing that Abraham was saved from the fire of the Chaldeans. And guess where we see that in one of the big religions today? The Quran. The Quran continues that false translation, which then became a legend. And surely Allah should know better. But you see, this is the importance of going back to these ancient languages, so we can put ourselves in the shoes of those people and go, now I know what they meant by X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Right. Right. Tired. Well, actually, I'm gonna have to go to bed here in a couple minutes. I gotta go to work tomorrow. 6 o'clock in the morning. So.
I don't have too much longer either, but I'll stick around for a few. But it's good talking again, Wyatt. We'll catch up more soon.
All right. All right. God bless.
All right, catch you what?
You too, buddy.
Yeah, I'm gonna shut it down for the night too, guys. Yeah, I'm shutting down. But it's been good talking to you guys. I wish we would have had it a little longer, but I'll see you guys. All right.
Yeah, no problem, man. We'll get together in a few. Okay, buddies. I'm gonna go.
All right,
go
catch you guys.
Bye.